Thanks, Prajakta, and good to see you again. ESG has been a flavor of the season, I must say. Every CFO, every organization is talking about it. In fact, if you look at the large banks or large companies, they have come up with a different designation called Chief Sustainability Officer, right? Who's looking at such new flavors like ESG and sustainability every organization. In fact, the first panel, which specifically was about the leadership, kind of partly mentioned about the ESG as well. So, friends, I have 45 minutes here with me, and I have 4 panelists. We'll try to, make it crisp and also try to take questions from you, because I understand that we have to take a lunch break at 1 o'clock, and we'll go for it. Even Pankaj has to leave at 1. So we'll try to finish in the next 45 minutes. So I have a couple of common and specific questions. That's a regular format that I have. And my common questions are for all of you. My common question is, what is an ESG roadmap needed for finance leaders? What level of transformation is finance leaders expected to create by having a ESG roadmap? So this is my common question for all of you, and I will start with you, Naina.
Thank you for that question. I think while we are looking at, we know the economic condition, we know climatic risk, all of us are aware of it, and the kind of risk associated with it. It's not the responsibility of just an individual or a government, but also business to look at it. So when you are a CFO or a financial leader, I believe that you need to present a value case to your organization rather than just a business case. When you say value, value has to be long-term, sustainable in nature, and it needn't be just about finance, but every other aspect as well. When you also look at, you need to also look at, how is it that you can have a net zero target in your organization's goal. Thirdly, you also need to integrate finance and non-finance as a part of your organization, right? It is not just about the finance, but also how collaboratively you will ensure that the entire transformation is happening successfully. So there are a lot of components in it. There are a lot of risks which need to be mitigated. So ESG is like a blueprint that you need to look at for your organization, which not only the CXO level understand, but every other employee in the organization also able to envisage where my organization need to reach. And hence, a roadmap becomes very, very crucial for that. I represent a professional body, which is Association of Chartered Certified Accountant. And we recently did research, an extensive research on it, and we have something called climatic action and the role of professional accountants. That clearly says that financial leaders need to dwell and look at long-term sustainability. Just one more thing in terms of the impact. I think the impact is going to be very simple. That is top line growth, cost reduction, employer profitability, employee productivity. These are some of the things that you surely would look at as an impact. But most importantly, how is your investor value increasing? So yeah, thank you.
Sure, Naina. ESG is a blueprint. I think it's a headline for me. Thanks for giving that information. Nilesh, let me move to you and take your perspective now.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, my perspective is ESG becomes a sort of a core value now. When we look at the business, it should become a core value around which we evaluate everything. We typically, from finance, we look at the return on capital or the value in terms of the discounted cash flows, whatever we say. But ESG becomes a value, and that's the big transformation. It's not only about previously, of course, when we talked about ESG, we would have talked about E part of it more, like impact on environment, and then the laws around it. How do we ensure that we comply, that we don't face penalties? The ESG completely changes this. It's a massive transformation in terms of looking at this whole concept holistically. Especially this S part of it. Again, G part is highlighted several times about the corporate governance or governance in general, about systems, procedures, and how do we ensure the stakeholder trust, etc. is maintained. But the S part is a very, very difficult part in this whole transformation. And how do you ingrain this in ESG into the business strategy? From a finance perspective, everything is linked to ultimately the business case. What's the business case for the ESG? But something this we need to evaluate from ESG perspective is a massive shift. And I see it, I would give a small example. How do we look at it? It changes our vision, it changes the perspective completely. Because we all talk about environment, And we talk about always air quality. Now every day in the newspapers you get air quality index, and we are worried because it affects us very badly, affects us, our family members, because of breathing problems, etc. But what about if you're driving past on the streets of Mumbai and you see so many children just there, they don't have a house, no chance of getting education. What do we do? I mean, we just drive past. We do nothing about it. This S part of it now, something which here we have to ingrain that also into it. And that's a different thing. We need to have different metrics maybe to evaluate our ESG performance. And that is something, a big transformation from a CFO perspective.
Sure, noted your points. In my conversation, when I speak to CFOs or industry bodies, I think the major feedback that I receive is everybody wants to go for it. It's that nobody say directly at least that we don't want to go for it. But they do not have right data points to adapt. They do not have right technology, in fact, to go ahead with it. And they don't have right resources which will actually help them build that. So thanks for adding that social part also, Nilesh, very aggressively. Pankaj, let me learn from you specifically about how do you look at the roadmap for the financial leaders.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I look at the ESG roadmap more like a strategic plan, which outlines the commitment, action, and goal of an organization. It is basically a set of initiative which comes along with a timeline and targets that needs to be met. Essentially, a lot of companies look at ESG only as a tool for risk management, but I think, as Amol was mentioning, it is more about long-term value creation that you could do. I think with the increase in the public diaspora around ESG, I think it's very important for any organization to proactively start working on it. If you talk to a consultant or advisors, they would typically say that an ESG roadmap should have 4 elements, which is SORR, which is strategy, objective, reputation, and risk management. If you see any global well laid out, and I'm sure, Naina, you also cover that as a part of your study, it would typically have 8 elements. I don't know if I remember all 8 of them, but typically it would include climate change. It would include your energy and efficiency. How do you deal with your labor, your diversity inclusion, your board compensation, executive compensation, board diversity, and risk management. As Naina was mentioning, zero emission goal. I think a lot of people believe that an ESG cannot not be without a zero emission goal. But I think it's not true entirely, because a zero emission goal typically would depend on what kind of industry you're working. And for say a company who's running a fleet of cars, for them it would be moving to a EV to reduce the carbon footprint. For a company which is into food, reducing the food wastage. For a company which is into say, financial or ITS or advertising media, etc. Diversity inclusion could be a very important thing. I think it's a collaborative approach. It's a comprehensive approach where your investors, your shareholders, your customers, and the regulators have to come together. So that's my take on the roadmap. I think on the second part, I think on the transformation, I think practically the world cannot. I think, and as Nilesh was mentioning about some of the things that we witness on a day-to-day basis, I think world today cannot afford to have a wait and watch approach. But at the same time, trying to bring about a metamorphic change may not be feasible. So I think it's very important for an organization to map your current process, practices, and your culture to what your realities are. What is the what is the investors, what is the shareholders, what is the expectation of everyone who's involved in the process. Try and assess the gap between the two and come back with things that you could do to reduce that gap. So overall, I think there are 2 elements. I think it depends on a business focus to 1, sustainability, and 2 would be best business practices that you want to be known for.
Sure, noted your points, Pankaj. Parag, can I have your marks now?
So, good morning, all of you. Now, as all have said already, I have one thing to say into the roadmap. It is more of a culture and less of the easy way of working. We have all worked for so many years and we keep on doing the things the way it is to be done. But when we look at what is happening around the world in terms of ESG, in terms of how to protect the environment, how to ensure that the governance structures are in right place and being followed, it's more of a culture, it's more of a mindset. And as a CFO or a finance person who was just a mere accounts, he moved to a chief financial officer, and from there he has to move much beyond that role of a cultural mindset. Because as we seen in the industry, it is being mandatory, so people are doing it. Previously, very few were doing voluntarily. So I think as Pankaj said about the board, as Dipal said about the board working into it, it's more of a mindset or roadmap that has to be created in the minds of people, your people, employees, to make them aware. Because every employee is a human being at the end of the day. And he sees everything what is happening, right, wrong, the pollution, the emissions, everything is seen. How much he wants to follow. So it's more of a mindset, more of nurturing them, educating them as to how the mindset or the culture can be changed to go to that roadmap of doing something good in ESG. That's my point into it. Other way, if you further look into that ESG, it's more of less of a financial value to it. It has to be done, it has to be done. The benefits of them is not in terms of the getting the profit out of it or growth out of it. It is more towards how we are proving and giving back to the society at the end of the day. So what you give back to the society and how you change your people behavior towards looking at the ESG, that's the game of the ESG.
Sure, Parag. Quite meaningful thoughts for sure. Let me get into some specific questions, and after that I will quickly take your questions as well. So, Naina, let me come back to you. You spoke about, presenting value and everything about the ESG. But what are areas of ESG which are very important for finance leaders and the challenges that in achieving them? Because we all understand the aspect of ESG and its importance. But number-wise, how should CFOs achieve that? What would you like to add here? Because you deal with so many accountants and the finance experts there.
I think it's a very interesting question. Well, I'm not going to talk on the numbers, but I'm going to give you a different tangent. For numbers, we have experts here who's going to talk on that. While we all know one thing that is with ESG, as an organization, you are also trying to get a value creation. And how is it your investor value is increasing, right? But I'm going to look at a different tangent here. And that is one, that is, as a CFO or a finance leader, you also need to look at your talent pool. And I think Pankaj and Parag were mentioning that it is not just about finance, but it's also about how is it that you are having your employees, your entire organization moving towards it. And we do a lot of discussion as a professional body with this Generation Z that we are all dealing with today. And this generation looks at working with an organization who has a business commitment for a long-term sustainability. They do research, they do understand and read about before they join an organization. Not just that, they are going to be your future consumers anyway. And as a consumer, they always invest in businesses which they respect. Gone are the days, where, generation looks at, just because loyalty, my forefathers and parents been investing, let me invest. They do not do that. They look at, whether I respect that business, then I will purchase from it, otherwise, no. In terms of challenge, I think the challenge is this economic uncertainty and this rising cost. Many organizations are facing challenge in terms of these rising costs, rise in operational cost, as well as, environmentally, how is it that you're going to protect it? So I think those will be the challenge, that will be something that, as a government, as organization, put together, how is it that we will be able to, overcome these changes? While uncertainties will be there, and ESG is here to stay. So the idea is not just to look at it as an investment for now, but an investment for the future. There will be a dent or an impact for now, but that's for a future cause, and that's how, it needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Sure. Noted your points, Naina. So Nilesh, you have been working into engineering, construction, and providing services for industrial plants and systems. In fact, Parag also belongs to a sector which are generally blamed for the chaos, maybe the dust, the plastic, or something like that. So, given this background, Nilesh, what's your playbook in terms of what is tangible ESG roadmap for the businesses that you see? Because you have to control all the outcome or the external effects of, how do you plan and what you create. So, from ESG information, and how do you actually then look at capital allocation and other aspects for that?
Yeah, the roadmap, I would say first thing, as I said, ESG is a guiding value for the business or the existence of the business itself. From that perspective, what our company we did, we created a sort of a purpose statement. Our purpose is because traditionally chemical industry is known for sort of polluting the environment, etc. Of course, we are not directly involved in manufacturing, but we build those plants, we design the plants. So we created a purpose that we create a livable planet. Now, just one simple sentence says it all. I mean, it is not just about then we talked about the portfolio, what sort of projects we would like to do, what sort of impact it would create, whether it is sustainable both from the point of view of environment, but also as a sustainable business model. So we will reallocate the portfolio, what sort of projects or what sort of business we want to be in and what sort of business we may not want to be in from a long-term perspective. So, and from this purpose statement, we define the vision, and then of course the business strategy around it. As far as the capital allocation is concerned, I mean, as a finance person, the capital goes where you get the maximum returns in terms of the value creation. Now, the ESG gives a different perspective to that. I mean, two ways. One is about the top line, the cash inflows. The inflows will come from businesses which are more sustainable in the long run, where the customers want those products, those services, and that would help you to generate those cash flows. And that's how we will select the projects where the capital should be allocated. But another perspective is the cost of capital. Now, cost of capital should calculate the ESG risks. Because if you ignore the ESG risk, I don't want to name the companies, but we see the projects they went for, they didn't consider the impact on the communities, and later on they had to close down the project. And this has a huge cost from the loss of capital, etc. So the ESG risk will come into the cost of capital. The stakeholders will demand that. And the higher ESG risk, the higher the cost of capital, which will deplete the value. So for me, it's rather a simple equation. The value creation, the same formula, we still use the discounted cash flows, but build a ESG risk in the cost of capital. And this will be more and more, it will be intangible today, but as we go along, we will see the companies getting lesser valuations because of the ESG risk that they pose. And I think that's the way I as a CFO would look at it. How to allocate capital based on this evaluation of the ESG risk and how it impacts my company's cost of capital.
Sure. What is the name of the company?
thyssenkrupp.
No, the company which shut down the plants.
Okay, we can't disclose it.
Sure.
Everybody knows, so.
Sure. So, but thanks. Meaningful thoughts, Nilesh, there. Pankaj, let me come back to you. You're kind of very similar to Nilesh in terms of the work culture. I mean, you are investing in the infrastructure projects, right? The roads and all, heavy projects and everything. So, how are you planning the investment structure and ability to influence operations and specifically investors to ESG integration with the organizations? I'm sure you must be talking to many of them. So how do you ensure that they are investing into right direction and look at ESG as one of the integral part?
Interesting question. So I think for us, ESG integration is still work in progress. We are not listed yet, so there's no regulatory requirement per se that we need to report. But we are currently doing ESG audit. We are doing ESG reporting. I think end of the day, it is all about a cultural mindset, and you need to create that awareness, as Naina was also mentioning, right from your customers to your employees to everyone. I think it's about doing that. I think a very important element here is also the ESG data, the quality of data that you have, the sophisticated data that you have. I think we are now embarking on that journey. We are doing a lot of studies, etc., to get an ESG data which is a quality data. Specific to my company, Cube Highways, we are India's largest highways and toll operators. Just to give you a sense, we have 25 SPVs, 25 assets across India. We are operational in 14 states. All of our assets have been rated AAA by various credit agencies. Investors include World Bank, IFC, I Squared Capital, consortium of Japanese investors, etc. So while the regulations per se are not, do not mandate us to do ESG integration, I think the investors in our case, because they're international investors, I think the number of compliances that we need to do, and I was talking backstage with few of my co-panelists, and I was giving them a few examples. Also, I think the nature of industry that we are in, it's some sort of a emission or, if I may say the word, detriment to the environment is inevitable. However, as an organization, I think we have done a lot of things. And just to name a few, I think one of the things that we have done is we have come up with a very innovative construction material, which is called as a modified polymer bitumen. So essentially, we take bitumen and we take polymer, we import it from different countries, and we mix it together, which essentially increases the life of our assets. The roads do not need regular maintenance or a major maintenance as much as it would have. So that kind of reduces the carbon emission. I think a matter of pride for us, because NHI, which is the regulatory authority, over the last couple of years have mandated for every other player to make sure that they use this product. I think we are also doing carbon accounting, which is essentially an annual activity for all our assets to monitor our carbon emission. We also doing rainwater harvesting, a very enhanced rainwater harvesting that's done. We have installed water meters at all our locations to monitor what is the water consumption that's happening. We're in the process of moving, so in a toll road, in a highway, you have those route patrol cars, etc. So we are in the process of moving from ICE vehicles to EV. And I think the cost saving that you have is phenomenal. I think, my only problem is I'm looking currently for a vendor who can provide this EV vehicles pan-India. But I think we are, 6 of our 25 SPVs, we have kind of moved from the normal vehicles to EV vehicles. And I think awareness, so the business model that we currently have, if you have 1,000 people at your HQ, you have 10,000 people who are on contracts, right? Your gardeners, your laborers, etc. So how do you kind of imbibe that culture in your vendors, in your customers also? So I think we do a lot of these sessions. It's a monthly, it's a bi-monthly kind of activity where we make them cognizant of that. I think a couple of weeks back, we had a session in Delhi where we called all our vendors and we said, forget about profit, right? We are 80 plus EBITDA company. We do not really care about the numbers. You tell us, how can we give back to the society? Of course, profit, obviously. I'm a CFO, so that's my bread and butter. That's my DNA. But then we said, how do we do things differently? How can we give back to the society? And I think the kind of this continuous, yearn to give back to the society. And I think there are a lot of examples, but in the interest of time, I'll just stop here. But I think we're doing a lot of things. So for instance, if we are making a highway and we think there's a loss of livelihood, if we think that, we have a toll booth somewhere and we can teach computers, because, if we have 10 computers there, why don't we get the local village people and teach them computers? So I think there are a lot of things that the company is doing. I think I joined this company a year back, and I've been telling them that if we are doing such fantastic work, why don't we publish it? Why don't we share the best practices that we are doing? So currently we are working on something like that. And I think hopefully I'll also be talking to Naina and see how ACCA can help us do that.
Happy to help.
Sure, absolutely, Pankaj, quite meaningful. In fact, thanks for adding that compliance part as well. So friends, I'm a literature student, and I have often heard this phrase called, the story of the West is written from the saddle of the horse. But when I look at the CFOs, I think the CFO story will be written from the saddle of the compliance risk and the taxation, because no CFOs stop or maybe talk without these terms. But quite meaningful, Pankaj.
Yeah, never in doubt about that.
No, thank you. So Parag, let me come back to you. So we have a great roadmap where the Prime Minister itself has told the whole world, specifically in G20, that India will achieve the target of zero carbon emission by 2070, and we are trying to reduce it to maybe 2050 or something like that. The pressure is on a lot of companies like you, and many other who are into specifically manufacturing, maybe plastics or something like that. So I would like you to take a minute more and maybe explain us. This is a very exhaustive question. Let me read it out for you. There have been many policy revisions and legislative challenges on the logistics, transportation, carbon market, e-waste, scrappage, refurbishment, and extended, producer responsibility, reporting and compliance under increasing environment regulations. So, considering this, is this imposing and shifting more responsibilities on manufacturers like you, specifically in the Indian market? And what are the major challenges that you face? Because, like you said, we have to go for ESG, but then these are the challenges, right? So how do you deal with it?
To answer your question first, we don't have a pressure. Because we are already doing this for quite a number of years. It is not that we have to do it now as per the guidelines given by the government. Coming to break into various parts, coming to the part of the carbon emissions, etc., we talk about, we are already working on how to put our plants onto a solar mode. That is one area which we are working very actively, because we got almost 120 plants currently. So now we are going step by step how to make it solar, so that we can save on energy. That's the one area that we are working very actively and very fast. The other area that we are working is that we are replacing our machinery with the energy efficient machines, high speed and energy efficient machines. This can also have two parts of it. One, it reduces my wastages to a great extent, the plastic wastage. It will help to save my water wastage. And third, it will save my electricity. So there's one more area we are working continuously on it for last so many years. The another area is about the water harvesting. This water harvesting we are doing from 2000 onwards. It is not that we are doing it now. And we have built dams, we have restored so many check dams. We are very active in Gujarat, into some parts of Maharashtra, where we are, maintaining the surface water, and also we are recharging the ground level water continuously. So this is we are doing constantly, and we are not worried about regulations, because we as such do it on our part. Yes, we need to expand our footprints of water harvesting across India, but to begin with, we are already over here. Coming to the plastic, a lot of myth around about plastic is to be banned and plastic is harmful. We don't agree with that, because we know for a fact that the plastic that which you are using, it is PET, LDP, HDP, are absolutely recyclable, 100% recyclable. And I don't think there is any investor to the same. And we are ourselves doing recycling through these agencies, so we know for a fact, not even today, if you walk on the road, you will never see in the next day morning the plastic bottles lying around. Why the rec pickers pick up plastic bottles? There is a value to it. The newspapers are being sold at 10 rupees a kg. Plastic bottles are 15 rupees a kg. Why? There is a value to it. A lot of people don't realize the value of the plastic. So in India, the plastic is fully recycled, which we are using completely. And you can see, you can make the school bags, the wallets, the uniforms. I think Pankaj may know better about it. Can be used in the road infrastructure also somewhere. I'm not sure, but it can be used over there. So a lot of places plastic.
Yes, it is. I think we are currently using that.
Correct. So it is being used constantly. So we don't find that as a threat to us, and we are doing it religiously. And if you see the compliance mode, we are already doing recycling 100%, more than 100% of plastic that we are consuming even today. So we are not worried about all those things. Yes, as a good brand, as a good citizen of India, we need to ensure that we follow ESG in the best possible way. But as I said, the mindset is very important, and we are inculcating all our employees this particular mindset, how we all have to be ESG compliant. Just because we are working in water brand doesn't mean that plastic we are creating and we are creating up waste in India. It is not true. So that's the thing. Other areas, if you look into it, we already have a bottle of change program which we have done for so many years now. And this program is specifically designed to go to various housing societies, to the hotels, to the corporates. Don't throw away your plastic. We'll come and collect from your places. We are already there into it, and we are getting good response. We are into, I think, present into 8 to 10 cities now, and our plan is to go in a couple of years to 25, 30 cities, which can bring plastic collection by our own, by the effort, at least 15-20% of plastic what we are consuming now. Then we already have a project called Naina V G, which is water harvesting, as I said, where we make check dams, we restore it. And if you look at the data available on our website also, we almost 13,000 acres of land that we have helped them to cultivate or convert the barren land to a fertile land, and increase the income of the farmers of 5 to 6 lakh rupees almost a year, which is very good initiative. Other part, of course, may not be a very clear to people as of now. But when, as Nilesh said, we have to focus on S, that is social. Now, the people working in the organization are not social. They are part of the setup. They are social. Unless until you work with them, you encourage them, they will not be able to help you to get the brand along. So whatever you can do for your employees, whether in terms of the any medical situations or any L&D thought process or insurance, these are all part of the social that you can do it. So we are doing all possible things, and as all of them said, the goodwill of the brand is not that you are growing by X percentage of making profit of Y. The value of the brand is what you are doing as a rule, as your moral, as your ethics, what you need to do. Need not be what is required to be mandatory. So if you voluntarily start doing it, what is to be done, and consistently follow it with your passion, you are at your doorstep. You need not to worry about the rules, regulations. That will automatically be followed. That's my answer to your question. And the
One
challenge,
point before Amol says, have you evaluated setting up kiosks for collection of bottles? So for instance, if there's an automatic kiosk, I put an empty bottle, I get 1 rupee back.
we had done in Bombay. But what happens, it has to be done through BMC, no other sources. And at some point of time, the kiosk gets out for some reason. We have set up at railway stations and a lot of places. But somehow it is, because it is in a prerogative of BMC, sometimes they allow, sometimes they pick it up. So we have a difficulty, practical difficulty.
You have your headlines.
No, I think, yes.
I'll
that's
just add one point
Sure.
on this recycling of bottles. We, as part, not actually CSR, on our own, our office is in Vikrodi. We, at the Vikrodi station, we installed one machine where all the people can just put their bottles. It's a bottle crushing machine, so that they just don't throw everywhere, and whether it is recycled or not. So on our own, it has been a great success.
And further to one more point.
Sure.
We always talk as CSR to be done, mandatory, all that thing. We in our company call CSR as OSR. We never use the word CSR in our company. We use the word our social responsibility. The simple meaning is the moment you put CSR, अरे ये तो मेरा काम नहीं, ये तो कोई करेगा. The moment you say OSR, it is our job, we need to do it. So we strictly follow that in our office. We strictly ban this word CSR. We say OSR bolo, then your mind will be, मुझे करना है. That is what. And of course, challenges, the other part of question which you asked me about challenges, the challenge is more of we don't have a uniformity of data. The data that we know for a fact is not registered in the mind of the authorities. So it's more of a data synchronization has to be very important. And as we talk about regulatory, see, the big companies are known brands, of course, they will have to mandatorily do it. But there are so many MSMEs also into this process. They are not being regulated the way it should be. So, and bottle is one part. I mean, in all business, there are so many MSMEs. And we are being encouraging MSME, which is need of the India, because we are growing. We need to, how we can bring them into this culture of thinking that this is what India is looking for. And as we know, we are, I think, 4th or 5th in terms of GDP of world. And we might become 1 or 2 steps ahead in 2-3 years down the line. So looking at all this globalization, green energy, we are trying to bring so many FDIs into India. As Nilesh said, ESG audit is going to be imperative for the foreign investment. Right. And it is as of now also.
Yes.
So I think if we voluntarily start doing it, the guidelines becomes, the rules becomes a protocol to follow. Right now we are looking rules as some sort of obligation कि ये तो करना ही पड़ेगा, नहीं तो penalty लगेगी. Why are you thinking on that? Do it. You will grow yourself. This is my take on both the questions.
No, absolutely. I think a detailed one, Parag. I like the point whether we should move from CSR to OSR. Just quick answer, yes or no. I think you already answered that, but just for my understanding, this is recyclable.
Should be. This is not manufactured by us, but should be.
Sure. Noted your points, Parag. So I have a couple of common questions as well, but let me come to you. If you have any specific questions. Yes, the gentleman there on the table in the middle. Yeah. Please.
No, still not? Yeah. Okay. So I have a question for Mr. Parag. So as you mentioned that you guys are already following the practice of this ESG since long, and like in your organization everything has been well established. But considering as our economy is growing exponentially, new market players are coming, like considering the startups are working. So what challenges they are facing in maintaining the ESG is like there are multiple factors. So what key factors they should keep in mind to maintain the ESG compliant companies?
You are talking about the water industry or?
Every aspect about the ESG it might
So
be
I would
important.
only answer one line to you. Any industry that is being startup, existing, ultimately aim is who is a consumer?
Agreed.
Every product has a consumer.
Yes.
If you can satisfy a consumer, your job is done.
But even if you are satisfying the consumers, but there might be that
Consumers are smart enough. They are not satisfied only by the quality of the product. They are also looking at the, as you said about ESG, all this thing. Nowadays, consumer, even youngsters, they look at all the areas. Otherwise, why there's hue and cry about this company and that company? So consumer, when I say, I am not saying a consumer could be illiterate, could be any consumer. So consumer satisfaction doesn't mean the quality of the product. That has to be there when a brand is existing. It's more towards how you are taking care of the consumer from an environmental perspective or the need perspective. It is not only about pricing.
Sure. Can we have another question from the
Slightly different
second row?
perspective on this, and I agree. I think this is the whole concept of disproportionate cost. You know, startups, I think two problems. One, limited resources, and two, the long gestation. So when we talk about ESG, the gestation period is too long. So I think for
Right.
some of the startups, I think that's a
But
problem.
that is going to be there. See, when you have a startup, that is going to be a known fact that ESG is a long roadmap for them. So, a lot of time we have seen even currently, a lot of people wants to keep on pumping money for startups, etc. And knowing for a fact that they are not going to make any money for n number of years. But looking at the industry in which you are going to be there, they have to perceive what are going to be the threats as you go on. Currently, there may not be a particular guideline for particular thing. But as you go on, for example, 15 years before, who thought of e-waste? Maybe hardly anybody thought of e-waste.
Right.
But now you look, e-waste is the first one. So when you start a new business, new venture, I think they have to think a few years down the line, what could happen with this kind of threats? So as you said about ESG audit, it is all about knowing about your business in future in terms of regulations, which may not be existing now. So this is my take on your
Sure,
answer.
sure. Can we have the question? Yeah, just question, please.
Sir, this is regarding allocation of funds for ESG. See, for CSR, it is, 2% of profits are to be used. It is statutory, requirement. Is there any requirement that minimum amount of expenditure or the fund allocation to be done for ESG activities?
Pankaj, do you want to answer that?
I don't think there's any mandatory sums that need to be contributed. But in our case, we would typically do it as a percentage of our profit, which typically is 4%. I mean, I'm talking about unlisted entities. It's around 4% of the spend that we have, which is an ever increasing number for us at Q Highways.
Sure.
Thank you.
The lady there in the, can we have?
Hi, this is Ruchika here from Novama Private. So while I understand, recycling bottles or e-waste or maybe even recycling clothes and using the paper, what else are you significantly doing which we can replicate?
While as an individual also there is a lot that can be done. It isn't just about an organization need to do an ESG for us to wait and then probably invest in it. Just to give an example, I was talking to these teenagers in London. They have stopped using cars. They said, I'll cycle it out. My health is more important. At the same time, nature is more important. We've started with electric cars more and more. How many people are investing in it right now? Very less, right? The idea is not just about looking at recycle. Now, that's like a trending quote. But when you look at it, it is about every small action that you're able to do towards the benefit of a planet. And that needn't be an organizational effort. Individually also, you being a part of the organization, or you are as an individual can do a lot.
So as part of an organization called Bharat Sukha Gagai, we are pursuing something called SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, which is also presented to the UN. And in that, we are doing very basic, simple things, which I'd like to share with everyone, if I have your permission. Instead of using tissue papers, now we started using handkerchiefs,
Great.
So that's one way. Secondly, every time we are in and out of any place, whether it's our loo in our office or even in our homes, as soon as we are out, we switch off electricity. And I totally agree with you, using bicycles. Obviously, a lot of us, since pandemic days, are doing carpools. So I think we should continue with that. So yeah, that's my bit on ESG on a personal level.
No, I think this is an interesting discussion, but we have a very limited time. So I think the first row and let me take this last question. Can you make it very quickly? Yeah.
This is Rakesh Nange from Nange. Listen, for my almost panelists here, do you find that there's a... If you, as an ESG compliant company, did you find actually true sense your cost of the fundraising went down? Was it also only limited to the international funds which you are borrowing it, or did you realize that, did you find that Indian banks, Indian funds also were lending money at a lower rate of interest than the standard if we were fully ESG compliant? Was this a practical experience?
So I think while generalization is neither fair nor warranted, but I think the domestic investors have still not woken up to the fact that, if you are very ESG compliant, as I was mentioning that, our investors is IFC, World Bank, etc. I think, if you look at the investors from UAE, etc., I think they would be very cognizant. But unfortunately, in India, while they would peg some importance to, how much you are ESG compliant, how much you are building on the risk and opportunities, I think still there is a long way to go. So
access to the international fund is cheaper? Or you get some little cheaper rate of interest?
Yeah, to an extent, yes.
Sure, thank you. Just one quick question then from the last, and this is the last question. Yes, please.
Okay, hi panel, thank you. So I'm Ram from IBM. So sustainability and ESG goals is a broader agenda on board and CEO's mind. But as specifically finance leaders or CFOs, are you driving any specific part of the ESG agenda, or are you owning that? Are you being asked to own any agenda? So any comment as a finance leader? Right?
Nilesh, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Of course, everybody has to own it, and if as CFO we are part of top management, if we don't, who will own it? Now, to give specific concrete examples, for us, S part, let's say, because governance, of course, it goes with penalties, everything, so obviously you have to do it, better do it, otherwise face conflict. But as far as the S part is concerned, we drive, for example, safety. And safety not only just of our employees, but because we are into project execution business, also of the workers, of the contractors. And as you're saying, what we do, we own it. We are required to make safety walks across all sites. And then really understand whether those whatever procedures and systems we have put in place are really followed at site or not. It is that we also walk that, we go through that journey and make sure we talk to the workers, understand, have they understood, is there anything that is lacking, whether in terms of resources, equipment, etc., safety equipment, and that's how we drive it. This is just one example, because unless you are safe, you cannot do anything else. So just as an example, yes, it has to be owned, and we do own it.
I just want to add on, I don't think it's a responsibility only of a CFO when it comes to it. I think there is a lot of collaboration by the C-suite to start with, that is, they need to collaborate with CHROs, CEOs, and then together having an organizational code, which is understandable by every single employee in the organization. As far as if it is transparent, inclusive, then there is a success. Otherwise, it's becoming difficult. It only will be there in the top. It will not get executed.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much for those questions. I kept my questions aside because the time is limited. I purposely did not speak about the technicalities and the issues like CSR or BSBR or something like that, which the SEBI has recently come up with. I thought, the more and the clean perspective matters the most. But thank you so much, Parag, Pankaj, Nilesh, and Naina for sharing those remarkable thoughts and your engaging participation. Thank you so much. I just wish I could have some more time. But I think the lunch is ready and we have to break it here. So thank you so much once again for listening to us very patiently, and thank you for your remarkable thoughts.